Hello, my name is William Rhodes. I'm at Studios of Key West, and this is an exhibition entitled William Rhodes Solo Exhibition. So this show is really exciting to me because I have a variety of different mediums that I work in. So this show includes some of my sculptural wood pieces, which have strong furniture influences. I have quilts, and I have drawings that actually have hand-sewn elements incorporated in them. I currently live in San Francisco, California. I've been making art for more than 40 years. Really, my interest in why I create art starts from my very beginning. Art was my therapy. It was my way of kind of healing through some of the trauma and things I experienced in my life in my early years. And then it became a practice that I continue to use to this day. So art really has become my calling and really the way to kind of pretty much keep me balanced in the world. So I was trained as a furniture maker in traditional joinery techniques. What that basically is where you basically learn how to build furniture where you don't use screws, nails, and sometimes without glue. So it was pretty hard technique to learn. I learned those techniques and then I incorporated them into the work that I do now. So I still make furniture, but I also make pieces that really have a strong sculptural feel to them. So sometimes when people actually see my furniture pieces, they really don't know how to approach it because they wonder, is this a piece of sculpture or is this an actual piece of furniture? The pieces that are currently in the exhibition really have more of a sculptural feel to them. I've been making quilts for more than 10 years now. And what brought me to Key West was the community quilt. I was really excited to do this. Basically, I was invited to come out and worked on a piece where I created a center panel which had cuts all around it. And that center panel, then we brought to a community space in the Bahama village, and people from the community actually took little fabric squares, they put their family's name, put things were very personal to them as far as connection to the community, and then they tied all of these pieces together to produce a larger quilt. And then from there, I was able to meet many people from the Bahama village community and actually interviewed them. I was able to do their portraits, and I also was given some amazing photographs, old photographs of the history of the Bahama village. And then I took all of those things, went back to my studio in San Francisco, and then produced an actual sewn quilt, which is much more formal quilt, but it still tells the history of the Bahama village and the community that's existed for hundreds of years. So I get so much out of these community quilts because it's therapy for myself, but also therapy for the community. I've done a variety of them. I've created quilts as far as South Africa. There was a project that I did where I actually went into the different townships in South Africa, worked with small kids, and they contributed to these larger quilts. And then I worked with kids in San Francisco that also contributed. So the two communities, South Africa, San Francisco, came together to produce 4 amazing quilts. Similar to the Bahama village, it's been the same thing. It's exciting to me because I see communities come together. So it's not just about producing a finished quilt or a finished object, but it's just what it does when you have this practice. It brings all of these people together. It brings together different generations. And with the event at the Bahama village, it was just so amazing to see because you had young people, you had kids, you had elders, you had seniors, you had everybody sitting together, working, adding to this quilt and sharing stories at the same time. So this history was also being shared while this practice was taking place. So I have a series of drawings in the exhibition. I've been working on these drawings for many years. It started when I moved to San Francisco and I saw a lot of people that were displaced. What I mean by displaced, San Francisco has a large homeless population. And I noticed that so many people would just walk by these people every day, not talk to them, not connect. And I understand, why that happens, but I started to really connect with some of the people, especially people I would see, quite often. And from that, I began to talk to them and really, I guess in essence, interview them and hear their stories. And so many people had just amazing stories. I mean, they contributed so much to society, but yet they still ended up in a position of being homeless. So I wanted to figure out a way to honor them. So I started to do portraits of some of the people that I interviewed. That expanded into the people that I interviewed from the streets, but I also then started to incorporate some family members and other people that I felt I had a strong connection with. One thing that really ties all of my drawings together is I actually, once I finish the drawings, I sit and I do a practice of sewing red needle and thread into each piece. As crazy as that sounds, this is a practice that I do because it kind of calms my nerves. When I watch television, it becomes like this meditative practice, and I use this basic stitch that my grandmother taught me years ago. She taught me, she said, if you're a young man, you need to learn how to sew your socks, put buttons on. You don't need to have to beg somebody to help you do it. So I'm going to teach you this basic stitch. So I do the same stitch all the time. And sometimes when I do it, it reminds me of my grandmother and what she taught me early on. So the color red, I feel like that is such a strong connection and people can relate to it because it's a blood connection. Everybody has a blood connection. So even if you see some of the portraits, they may be people that you don't really connect with or feel like you would have any relationship with at all. But just the fact that there is this thread, this red thread that we all share that binds all of us, it's really important for me to really try to convey that. So every piece that you see, has this red thread connected to it. Mm-hmm. So when people look at my neon work, at times they're really amazed at some of the letters and everything. And I have to be honest, I cannot take credit for being a neon artist. There are basic letters that I can do, like the letter I or maybe even a J, but I have to give credit to several neon studios I've worked with in San Francisco and even Atlanta, Georgia. They were kind enough to let me come into their studio, and they stood over me and made sure I didn't blow anything up and showed me how to do the practice. So when you see the more complicated letters like J's and E's, they're absolutely done by professionals. Each neon piece is actually done in a traditional way. They're actually blown glass tubes, and the actual neon gas is inserted inside of them, and it hits an electrical charge, which actually creates certain colors. So this is an old technique. This is not a modern technique at all in any of the pieces. They're all hand done that way. The reason why I chose neon in the wood sculptures is I wanted to draw people in. When people look at some of the subject matter or some of the images or some of the pieces that I do with the sculptures, naturally they may not always get a strong connection. They may feel like, well, I can't relate to that. I don't really understand it. I feel like there's a disconnect. But one thing I've noticed, whenever I include neon into pieces, it's like a moth to a flame. People are always drawn to those pieces. And that, just being drawn to those pieces, starts to open up people's minds so they want to explore it more and try to learn more about the pieces. And also, many of the pieces that I do with the sculpture has a story, a personal story of my life or other people's story. And there may be people that are, again, someone that's no one would want to really hear their story or see any value in it. As soon as you put that neon on it, all of a sudden it becomes like a huge light gets cast on that story. So then that creates a certain amount of excitement and again draws people in. There are some people that I interview on the streets and I've been able to do video. Most just allow me to hear the story, and then I have to write it when I go home. In this exhibition, there are 4 quilts. 2 of them are the Bahama village quilts. One of them is a quilt that has the symbol of Sankofa, and it incorporates seniors from the community of San Francisco. There's one quilt in the exhibition that is really important to me because it's a collaboration that I did with this artist by the name of Mr. Emory Douglas. For those of you that don't know, Emory Douglas was the creator of all of the artwork that was used in the Black Panther Party from the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. So if you go back at any of the magazines, any of the literature, any of the symbols that were used for the Black Panther Party, Mr. Emory Douglas did those symbols. So I collaborated with him and we created this piece. In the center of it, there's a woman, this strong woman who's fighting as a revolutionary for the community. And this is a historic symbol he created in 1969. So it's iconic. We've done several quilts. This just happens to be one of them. And I incorporated seniors from the community, seniors that have this history of activism and involvement and really fighting for their community to try to make it a better place. So it's a very special piece to me, just like the Bahama Village quilts are. And I'm just really honored to be able to work with so many amazing people, especially Mr. Emory Douglas. Please come to Key West, come see this exhibition. I'm really excited about it. And also just come to see the magic of Key West. Key West is a very magical place, very special place, and it has just so many amazing communities that are really here with so much history and so much culture and so many things to offer. Thanks again.